Hello and welcome to yet another edition of A Page from History. I am Neelanjan Mukhopadhyay. In today's episode, we will discuss a very important anniversary from the web world or the world of the internet. 15 years ago, Hotmail made its debut, enabling people to access emails on the move. Hotmail was one of the first webmail services on the internet, but obviously went on to become the most popular. It provided freedom from ISP-based email. At that time, most of us, of course, did not understand technology behind all this. We only knew that if we had to access emails, then we had to sit on a previously configured computer and dial into the internet. Hotmail made this history as it given our inboxes in a briefcase that we could carry around. On top of it, it was free. Really, the beginning of webmail was hot. Barring official letters, most of us would have forgotten when we last wrote one. We also wouldn't remember when we last went to a post office to buy postage stamps or postal stationery. Snail mail, as we refer to the postal system, is either used in special cases or when we have to send something to places without internet access. In the decade and a half since the launch of Hotmail, email technology has evolved considerably. But above all, it has changed modern-day communication. We will talk about all this with a panel of experts. My first guest today is Narayan Madhavan, very senior journalist who's essentially one time a business reporter who's done very good work but has developed tremendous expertise on technological matters. Priyanka Satchar, a well-known social media consultant, also somebody who has embarked on a new profession of being a highly specialized and skilled wedding photographer. Kishore Bhargav, a well-known technology consultant who's been writing and commenting on technological issues for more than 2 decades. Welcome to the program, all of you.
Thank you.
Madhavan, let us first try to understand. We are talking about 1996. Hotmail comes onto the scene. There are a few other, webmail services, but really it's Hotmail which puts it on the internet map in the horizon of the perception of the people. When we look back at that, how important was the development?
I think we have to remember as Indians something very significant about Hotmail. The fact that it was founded by Sabir Bhatia, who was born in Bangalore. Hotmail was founded on the 4th of July 1996.
Symbolically the Independence Day.
Yeah, it's noticeably the Independence Day of the United States, and it took an Indian Army officer's son from Bangalore to go and do it there. There's a nice joke we have about the fact that it took an Indian, Indians are relatively, being immigrants in the US, are more careful with the money, and they know the value of money more than the average American, or it was joked. So they said that as an Indian, he knew what it means to get something free. So, and a lot of people will use it if it is free. So he thought of an idea of a web-based email service, and the whole idea was to get revenue from advertisements. So a lot like TV programs, that instead of watching TV programs in exchange for advertisements, you had email in exchange for advertisements. At that time, it was a revolutionary idea. So to begin with, the whole business model of having a web-based email was invented, and the very fact that it was free made a lot of people actually get on. And as you might recall, Hotmail was sold for something like $400 million within 18 months of its founding. And in fact, I remember exchanging an email with Sabir Bhatia myself at that point. Even he probably had no clue about the way it was growing virally. The word viral, by the way, is very popular now in internet. When something spreads like a virus, And if I recall right, the first viral thing on the internet itself was Hotmail.
Right.
You know, this whole idea of something, a big idea catching on and people catching on to it was first witnessed during the Hotmail phenomenon, and therefore the value of that network grew.
Right.
You know, there is a fundamental principle in network economics that higher the nodes of a network, the value increases even further.
Right.
So email is a classic example, and it was a dramatic shift because email lowers costs significantly, because unlike the telephone,
right,
it's able to travel at lower cost. The other aspect which is not much discussed, but actually it is implicit in the way we use email, is what they call the asynchronous nature of email.
Right.
That is, unlike a telephone conversation, you and I don't have to talk to each other at the same time. So you can send it now. It can be as instant at the same time as conveniently, synchronized as possible.
Right.
So these are the two major achievements, and the fact that it was free and the fact that it was global, in a context of people spending lots of money on long distance phone calls and time, dramatically altered and changed the game.
Right. Priyanka, when we look back at 15 years ago, and if we actually say that let us try to write a history of communication, so would you say that that it very neatly divides into a pre-webmail and a post-webmail chapters?
It definitely does, because before that we always used to communicate via the paper and pen mail. It used to take days to go, and it wasn't even guaranteed whether it would reach anywhere or not. And people had to resort to things like registered post and acknowledgements and a lot of other things. And with an email, it was like something that was infinite suddenly became very, very minute. So the communication difference was huge. You could type it from the comfort of your college, or at least then it was college, not at homes, because the internet was not that prevalent. But you could at least type it from a place where you didn't have to go to the post office and stand in a queue and do things. It was very much nice, and it was also good in the sense that it had a graphical user interface. It was not something which was command line, if I were to use that jargon, which the internet was till that point, more or less.
That's a very pertinent point she's making, because Kishore will be able to tell us more on this, because his familiarity with email, mine goes back to 1991 in a conceptual sense. He's been
possibly be going in even earlier.
Yeah, mine is like it's important that Priyanka mentioned this, but before Kishore takes over, a very important point. She mentioned graphical user interface, which is, in simple common man's language, it means the use of icons and colorful symbols on the screen. Apple introduced it in a big way, and then Windows made it popular. Windows 3.1, which was launched in 1991, was a significant hallmark. So like you have before Christ and after Christ in history, you should have the before GUI and after GUI in email. And over to Kishore on what happened before GUI.
Yeah.
So when you ask about the pre-webmail and post-webmail, my view is a little different. First of all, I'm a diehard Unix user, and most people tend to associate Unix with a character-based interface, which means that there's no graphical interface, which is actually not quite correct, because Unix has always had a very, very good graphical interface. However, there is a reason some of us tend to use a text-based interface. And the reason is that I can make it as light as I want, and I can use it on almost any kind of device. So, given the constraint that I'm not going to be able to buy a very fancy computer, I have a very small phone on which the screen is very small, I can't afford to have too much of that space being taken up by the interface.
By other things.
Right. So, if I go back to the time, we are talking about 96 as the time for email. I started using email in 1984. And that's a time when
you would have been among the very few Indians who were using it.
Because let's put things in perspective. India got internet publicly publicly available internet on the 15th of August 1995.
That's right.
So, when I say that I was using it in
96 in
1984,
Hotmail, when it came, when it was official launch, India was just very new to
entering
the world
the
of internet. In
world.
fact,
Correct.
Hotmail did not come to India till about 97, 98.
Right. So when you go back to that era, email had become a very strong tool for communication. I mean, I have so many stories from various people at the individual level, at the institutional level, where even organizations like NCST in Bombay, which had internet access as early as 1988. Where they were transferring email via cycle to their various campuses. So people would write out their email by hand, and somebody would transcribe it, put it on floppy. A guy would carry it across to one of the centers, and then it would get uploaded and get onto the system. So we've seen a very drastic change in the way email has worked. It certainly has changed our lives and the way we communicate. And despite all the new mediums that have come in, I still truly believe that email is the one thing that rules the internet even today.
Yeah, in fact,
right.
in the language we call it the killer app. They say email is still the killer application for internet.
Yes, I agree.
Madhavan, I have a very simple question. And would want a very quick response to you, because it's now time for us to move into a break in a short while. Why did Hotmail become such a huge success and other similar webmail services did not? What was so unique about Hotmail? Or just a matter of luck?
We have plenty of time to argue about the ups and downs of Hotmail, but the simple fact is that Hotmail was the first free web-based email. So it only had the first mover advantage, and you and I can debate all day on whether Bill Gates squandered the advantage that he acquired from Sabir Bhatia. That's a different story after the break, perhaps.
Normally we use email without understanding its technology. Most often we also forget that email has a history of its own evolution. We'll come back and discuss this when we come back from a break. Stay with us.